we had an appointment to film with Elon at 5 p.m. So we leave early, just to make sure nothing happened. At about 3:45, even though we were 2 or 3 miles from the launch pad, we failed to realize that you have to drive 25 miles backwards to get to the nearest bridge to cross the canal. There's a shipping canal. So it's like an hour drive. We do the hour drive. We get to the SpaceX launch pad. It's sunny. We drive down and take some photos of the rockets. Then we try to figure out what's the most likely building that Elon and Elon's assistant are in, and we found the only building that looked like an office building, and we parked on the road outside, texted the lady, don't want to give her name, and she said, "Oh, running behind 2 hours. Do you mind if we give you a tour for 2 hours?" And Sandy and I are like, "Sign me up." Yeah. So we pull in and park on the premises, and we get a 2-hour tour of SpaceX.
And quite frankly, it's kind of the biggest deal ever.
Yeah.
I was thrilled because I've worked on launch vehicles in the past, and that would be for several different companies plus NASA. And watching what they were doing versus what everybody else in the world has done, like a launch vehicle was 2 years in the making for NASA. They're shooting for one every 3 days. Yeah. That kind of puts things into perspective. When you're talking to someone like Elon Musk, you get a much different impression of how fast is fast versus someone who's a fixed in place scientist.
Yeah. And I was impressed with their willingness to do iterative learning through trial and error.
Right.
And the person who gave us a tour showed us the header tank and explained the problem that they had on the header tank on SN8 and why that failed and the things that they did to change it. And here we are standing and nothing's roped off. There's no clean room. It looked more like an oil rig, with people welding everywhere. And we went inside SN15, and we also got to see the lower booster of a future rocket that they have not tested the lower booster yet.
Yeah.
Only the upper half. It was a phenomenal tour. So we saw all the manufacturing steps. They even explained the design methodology on like the landing feet and their deployment strategy, some of the things they're doing for strength at certain stress areas. So we got a bang up tour.
The thing that I think is the most impressive is that when we went through that and we talked to them, everybody said, well, we didn't expect any of these things would come down and settle straight. We have some issues that we have to try and figure out how to get around. So when it comes down and blows up, it's no big wow. It's just another experiment. Now, if you equate that to the auto industry, we do crash tests. So we know that it should work according to the computer, but you really don't know until the car hits a barrier or the barrier hits the car. Same thing is true with the SpaceX vehicles. These are experiments. They're tests. So they tested a lot of stuff. They're happy with some things, but when it comes back down, if it blows up, so what? They're going to scrap it anyway. It doesn't really matter to them. So when you see it in the newspapers or the people that love to, I think the newspaper thing is if it bleeds, it reads. But at the end of the day, any engineer, any scientist knows that, you try 1,000 times and you fail, 999 times. All you got to do is hit one, and then you're in. It's all done.
Yeah. So they kind of remove that stigma of space development, space flight development without failure. So they have to accept that during the development process.
Yeah.
So after the tour of SpaceX, we met back up with Elon's assistant about 10 or 15 minutes before 7. Sandy went in and talked privately with Elon.
Half an hour.
For
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And I was just standing there in the lobby with my tripod and my iPhone and my mic. just standing there by myself. People are walking by, and then I get waved in. I come in, I set up the camera, and Elon looks up and goes, "It's just." He goes, "It's just a phone."
You may not know when we got the.
It's just a phone. Oh, it is the phone is the camera?
Yeah, it's my phone.
Yeah, we don't waste too much money on fancy stuff.
It works, I guess.
Well,
All right, cool.
so the GoPro is actually a backup camera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what's the other thing there? Okay, that's the backup. All right.
Well, the backup, and then your microphone is the one that's.
He goes, "It's just a phone," and I had assumed at some point he had been filmed, with an iPhone 11 or 12. Now, granted, the lighting wasn't the best in that conference room. Like, I think it's a lot brighter in here, Tyler, would you say, than that conference room?
Yeah, for sure.
But it was adequate, and I thought that was kind of interesting that he said, "Yeah, it's just a phone." And then we got rolling with the interview, and Sandy, most people saw that interview, so.
Yeah, I think we can probably skip through that. But the thing that I thought was even more amazing was after I got done, I shook his hand, and he said, "We're going to have a design review. You want to stick around?" We spent 2 hours watching a design review. I was blown away. I've seen dozens of CEOs. I've never seen a CEO ever, or a president, that knew more about the product, that knew the details of a product, that could bring an idea and discuss it, not just in, grandiose hand waving kind of, but hey, let's use this formula and rattle off a formula, or rattle off a material, or rattle off a process that is kind of obscure unless you're like a detail engineer. I was blown away by that, and that kind of stuff. Like I say, you don't see executives know much about.
Yeah. So Sandy and I are sitting in this meeting. We're about 2 hours into the meeting after the interview. It's 10:30 or 10:45.
10:35. Yeah.
I look over at Sandy, and we're remaining quiet, and we hadn't eaten dinner, and we had almost no sleep the day before. And I kind of mouthed to Sandy, "Do we just leave?" And we did. Sandy.
I went over and said goodbye.
We said goodbye, and
I made a couple of one suggestion for sure. He said, "Hey, that's something we do that already. How come we're not doing it on this?" And then got up and left. And so
we walk out into the parking lot of SpaceX in southern Texas. There's still a couple dozen cars there. People are bustling around, and Elon is still inside that building, approaching 11.
with his whole team.
Well, a moderate team.
Well, the team for that particular product.
Still working away. And one thing I'll remember is Elon's assistant, as I walked out, she goes, "You had enough?" Kind of implying like, look at how much, Elon's working, how dedicated he is. And we were tired. We ended up eating dinner after that. Yeah. So now it's Saturday morning. We're headed home, and Sandy and I put, Detroit, Michigan in, and it was 12 or 13 charge stations. It said 36 hours, and we never stopped. We did a straight shot home and got back to Michigan at 9 p.m.
Yep.
Sunday.